All right, let's go ahead and just jump right in. Again, thank you everyone for being here. I know how packed calendars get, and so the fact that you carved out 30 minutes for this, it means a lot. To introduce myself, my name is Shawnna Sumaoang. I'm the CMO here at Dito, and today we're going to talk about something that I hear from product leaders constantly. That you're getting probably more customer feedback than ever, and that it's somehow making decisions harder and not easier. So we like to call this the product feedback paradox, and more input coming in, less clarity going out. And over the next half an hour, I'll walk you through a practical framework for fixing it. Nothing theoretical, just the approach that we've seen work from real companies. And I'd love to keep the audience engaged. So throughout, if you again have questions for me, please type them into the Q&A section. And if you want to share kind of your perspectives and what you've been through, I'd love to understand. So before we jump in, I'd also love to have you drop in the chat like what brings you here today. Are you a PM, CS leader, marketing, something else? Helps me kind of know who I'm talking to in the audience. So, a little bit about me. I'm the CMO at Dito. I've spent over 20 years in marketing, building customer and community programs and running revenue and demand generation. And I've spent a lot of my time talking to product and marketing leaders about how they use customer voice. And I'll be honest, I keep seeing the same patterns. And that's really what sparked this whole webinar. So here's the plan. We'll start with what the feedback paradox actually is and why it trips up even really good teams. And then we'll take a look at the cost of getting it wrong because this isn't a minor issue. From there, we'll go through 5 steps, the framework essentially, for getting all of your feedback into one place, scoring it by what matters instead of maybe the loudest customer, using AI to catch patterns that maybe you would actually, potentially miss. Um, and then how do you communicate back to customers so that they keep contributing? And how do you then go about tying it into your roadmap? So we'll go ahead and go through that, and then I'll actually showcase a little bit how we do this here at Dito today, some of the things that we look for, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So again, if something comes up along the way, please feel free to drop it in the chat. Don't wait. And I promise we'll carve out some time at the end for that. So here's the problem, and it's a bit uncomfortable. If you're a PM, you're pulling feedback probably from everywhere. Trust me, I've been there. Slack threads from CS, support tickets, NPS comments, Salesforce notes maybe, or activity records, gong recordings, survey responses. On any given day, I mean, I feel like oftentimes people that are trying to understand product feedback from their customers might have to check 5 or 6 tools just to get a read on what customers are saying. And candidly, here's the weird part. The more you collect, actually, the harder decisions often get. Because feedback shows up in different formats, different levels of detail from different types of customers, right? A very, as I mentioned, loud enterprise account might hammer the same request in every call. And meanwhile, maybe there's a pattern that actually matters that's sitting in support tickets that maybe no one's really reading. And only 21% of product managers say that they use customer feedback as a primary input for prioritization. And that number, honestly, it bothered me a bit when I first saw it. 4 out of 5 PMs are building roadmaps based on what the last meeting they were in, whoever made the strongest argument. So, as I said, we're collecting more customer input than ever. We just haven't really figured out how to use it. And that gap is what this entire session is about. So again, I'd love to get a sense from the audience. I'd love to learn how many different tools does your customer feedback live in right now? And I'd love a number. You can toss it in the chat. But I'll tell you that we often hear pretty regularly that it's about 8 or 9 in different channels. And so what does this actually cost? About 40 to percent of product decisions fail because the feedback behind them was incomplete or misread. And again, it's not a talent problem. The teams are often really quite good. It's just simply that the inputs, the signals that you're getting from your customers aren't. And so 63% of PMs say that their biggest headache is turning customer input into clear priorities. So not collecting it, but actually organizing it into something they can actually act on. And only 23% of organizations have a voice of customer process that actually works across departments, which means in most companies, CS knows one thing, sales knows another, support knows a third, and products trying to reconcile all of that without a shared source of truth. But the part that doesn't show up in the surveys is the day-to-day damage, right? It's the meetings with your customers that just go in circles. It's prioritization internally that turns political because there's no shared framework. And so engineering is tuning out the roadmap because the justification keeps changing. And customers who essentially stop giving feedback altogether because they never hear back from you. And so the companies that get this right, they treat feedback like a system with clear inputs, rules, and outputs that, and everyone treats it like, you know, something that they can actually get their arms around and really understand what's coming from your various customers. So I'm curious again, questions for the audience. Like, does your organization have a formal voice of customer process that you actually are able to leverage to span departments? Yes or no in the chat. I am genuinely curious. So I'd love to hear from folks on the line. But one step that is probably the least glamorous and probably the most impactful is if you take a look at this slide, support, sales, CS, surveys, email. This is five sources and essentially five different silos, right? Every single one of them has a real customer behind it, and that customer is giving you signals, they're giving you inputs. But when they stay disconnected, you're working with fragments. And so you walk into a prioritization meeting with anecdotes instead of data. And the fix is that hub, that one place where everything flows in and gets tagged in the same way, connects to the same product areas. It's a simple concept, but it creates a massive difference in practice. Um, and so here's what's happening at most companies. Again, support logs, requests come in through maybe Zendesk, sales might be putting objections in Salesforce, CS tracks renewal feedback in maybe Gainsight or in spreadsheets, and marketing's running surveys. And there's always always Slack and email communications somewhere. And each of those tools contains, like I said, real signals, but when they don't talk to each other, you're chasing individual stories instead of seeing patterns. And you end up in meetings having to say things like, well, I heard from one customer that instead of here's the data across 200 customer accounts, and being able to state that is extremely powerful. So again, the solution is pretty straightforward. It's simple to say, but I recognize oftentimes it can be harder to do in practice. But one repository with consistent tagging and connected to product areas and customer segments. And if you can layer AI on top of it to auto cluster themes, that's even more powerful. But even without AI, just getting everything in one place is a huge step. And I've seen teams go from we don't really know to, oh, there's clearly one or two things we need to address this week. So the rule of thumb on the bottom of this slide is definitely worth noting. Uh, every feedback channel should connect to your central system. And if it doesn't, it's just adding noise. So again, I'd love to understand like how many tools does customer feedback live in your organization? And like I said, for a lot of folks that we talk to in the industry, we're often seeing it anywhere between 8 or 9 regularly. And it's wild when you count them up. So curious to see what folks in the audience are working with. But the next step is probably where I see most teams get stuck. The difficult thing to factor in here is that, you know, The default instinct is 50 customers ask for feature X, three customers ask for feature Y. So X wins, right? Not necessarily. Again, those 50 might be free tier users requesting a nice to have. Those three might be your top enterprise account saying we can't renew with this. Volume and impact are completely different things, and mixing them up is how you build features that no one's going to pay for. So you really need a scoring system. And again, I want to make sure you guys get some practical tips out of this. So this is tip number 5, but on the left, there's 4 criteria that work really well together. Revenue influence, whose feedback is this? A 500K account should probably outweigh a trial user. Frequency, and this is the same theme that's showing up independently across different segments of customers. Strategic alignment, so does this move the product forward or sideways into something that you'll regret 6 months later? And then effort versus payoff. Can you ship it in a sprint or is it like a quarter long project? And the matrix on the right is a simple way to map it. So high impact, low effort, start there. High impact, high effort, put it on the roadmap with real justification. Low impact, try to deprioritize it no matter how many people are asking. And when you score it this way, prioritization meetings get a lot shorter and people stop arguing because there's a shared framework that everyone can see. So, again, highly recommend this approach. And if you want a copy of a scoring rubric template, just shoot me a note and happy to send it to you after this webinar. So then let's go into step 3. So steps 1 and 2, they get your house in order, right? Step 3 is where things get really interesting. Manual analysis doesn't scale and it's biased. We read feedback through the lens of what we already believe. We might miss subtle connections, and spending a full afternoon reading 400 support tickets to look for themes, that's not my idea of a good time. So this is where I love the power of AI. So AI tools can do this work in seconds. And I don't mean vague AI magic. I mean for specific things. Sentiment detection. And so is this positive, negative, neutral? How intense is this? Clustering, so grouping complaints that sound different but are really maybe about the same thing. Like onboarding is confusing, there's too many steps to get started. I couldn't figure out the setup. Those are all actually one problem, right? A human might tag them 3 different ways, but AI is going to help you catch that connection. And then temporal tracking. Did sentiment around feature X improve after your last release, or did it get worse? And you'd be surprised how often teams ship something and have no read on whether or not it helped move the needle. And then last but not least is trend alerts. So when a new theme starts to spike, you can actually get flagged before it becomes a massive fire that you then have to try to go put out. And so the numbers, 60% less time spent on review. I'd actually argue more than that because going through 400 tickets it's time consuming. 30% more accuracy. And again, these stats, they're not marginal. To be clear, this doesn't replace your judgment. You still get to decide what to build from a product perspective, but you're deciding with the full picture instead of whatever you happened to read last week. And so again, to the audience, I'd ask, like, is anyone already using AI for feedback analysis? I'm curious kind of what tools you've tried. Would love to hear a little bit more from you guys in the Q&A or in the chat on this front. And then, oops, sorry, apologize. Let me go to the next slide. And then this step gets skipped the most, and I'd argue it probably actually matters the most, and that's collecting feedback is easy, and analyzing it, again, especially with AI, is very doable. But telling people what happened with their input, that's honestly where I see most teams drop the ball. And I mean, if you think about it from the customer side, they took the time to share their experience and then nothing, silence, no acknowledgement, no update, no indication that anyone read it. What do you think they do next time you ask? They probably aren't going to bother. And internally, it's the same story. CS flags something in a meeting and it goes noted, but nobody follows up. 3 months later, the same issue gets raised like it's brand new. So if you look at the flow, collect, review, plan, release, most teams do step one just fine, like I said. Everything after that, though, tends to fall apart. The fix to this is to assign ownership at each stage. So create visible status tags under review, planned, released, and automate the notifications when a customer suggestion ships. They hear about it. When CS needs talking points for a renewal, they can see which feedback drove recent releases. And the stat on the right, customers who see their feedback acted on are 3 times more likely to contribute again. And that's not a small bump. That's a difference between a feedback program that dies and one that actually compounds for your business. And so again, I'd love to understand like how do you currently tell customers what happened with their feedback? Do you have to do so through a manual email? Is it a marketing email? Is it in-app? Nothing. Like I just want us to be really, really honest about where we are right now. So everything that we've talked about here leads to uh, making roadmap decisions that you can actually stand behind. And I talk to PMs who spend half of their time in prioritization meetings, defending choices they're not even sure about. And sales wants one thing, CS wants another, and the CEO saw a competitor feature and now wants that as the top priority. Without evidence, every roadmap conversation is a debate about opinions. And so when you link roadmap items to customer evidence, I've seen 3 things radically change. Engineering stops asking, why are we building this? Because the answer is right there. Not the CEO heard about it, but 47 enterprise accounts flag this as a renewal blocker, and here are the tickets. CS and sales really like they get the real talking points. Instead of vague promises about listening, they can actually point to specific features that came from customer feedback. And leadership sees how customer needs connect to revenue. And that's obviously a language that most leaders can understand, and that helps you get budget approval. And so the panel at the bottom has the mechanics, right? Link features to evidence, track whether shipped features moved your metrics, and over time, you are going to start to build a model where every decision has this amazing paper trail to it. And so, again, think about your last roadmap review. How much of it was customer evidence versus somebody's opinion? And I think that ratio will kind of tell you where you are. All right. So if you're ready and if it's all right, I'd love to show you guys how, again, at Dito, we do some of this, how we drive clarity for action. I apologize. Let me have multiple screens up in case that is not evident. I'm having to pop between screens, but I want to make sure I'm sharing the right thing. So let me see. Come on. Oh, live demo. Lovely. Let's see if oh, there we go. Okay, okay. Sorry. Apologies. All right. So for those of you guys that may or may not be as familiar with Dito, and hopefully you guys can all hear me now because it also looks like I might be a little frozen. Lovely. Gotta love that on a live webinar. But I'll just keep pressing on. But if you guys are having trouble hearing me, please do let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I'll continue on at this stage and just hope that everyone's still along for the ride despite me being frozen. But here is the Dito interface. So I'm logged into Dito. And again, you can run a variety of ways to inquire to your customers about feedback across a multitude of topics. And so we call this essentially campaigns inside of Dito. And so I have a few. This is, again, my demo instance. So apologies, these are just example ones. But here are quite a few of the templates that we have right out of the box inside of Dito. Some of these are immediately available. Some of these for existing customers. If you'd like access, please work with your CSMs. You can potentially be one of our design partners and help us out on this front. But we are going to talk about kind of product insights. And the way that we do that inside of Dito today is via our AI interview agent. And so you'll set up a campaign to collect a specific set of product insights. You'll provide Dito and prompt it with kind of what the insights are that you're hoping to inquire about inside of the AI interview as it's conducting that with your customers. You'll identify the segment of customers that you want to send it to, and you can determine whether or not you want that to be batch or trigger based, really up to you and your preference. And then you really set it up to run, and it can either, again, kind of run at one time or run based to trigger points. So sometimes what we see is we'll see customers that maybe want to do it based on whether or not their customer has given them feedback through a particular channel, and we can flag that activity and deploy a Dito campaign or maybe a field changes in your CRM and lets you know that, hey, there's some feedback on this product. So there are different ways in which it can be triggered, but you can, like I said, either do it batched to a specific segment of accounts, or you can trigger it in real time based on the signals that you're getting from your customers. What Dito does, because again, this is only a 30-minute webinar, so I'm going to try to keep this pretty tight, is it's going to roll up all of that feedback into what we call the Knowledge Hub. So you can see all of your feedback in the assets. You can filter it down by a multitude of things. I can look at feedback from a particular segment, again, for a particular product line, from specific companies, of certain ratings, of certain roles, of certain industries. So you can really kind of drill and get the feedback that's going to be kind of most relevant to you and your role. Um, and you can create a lot of amazing content and report and insights directly inside of the Dito product. Again, I know we're not going into that today, not necessarily the topic at hand, but just wanted to expose everyone to that in case, again, you're a little less familiar with Dito. You can also see people and the respective feedback that they might have given you, so you can drill and just understand what individual people inside your customer ecosystem are telling you. And similarly, you can actually go into respective companies. So you can actually understand at the account level what is the collective feedback that we are getting from a particular customer account. So again, wanted to kind of share this. But the other thing I also wanted to share is once you've collected all of this feedback from your customers, again, through the deployment of a batch or a trigger-based campaign where an AI interview agent is actually researching the person, researching the company, researching the market, understanding the contextual relevance of what you're trying to understand from a product feedback perspective. All of that feedback, again, gets fed back into the Knowledge Hub. And so you have access to all of that data. But what's even more powerful now, and I have to say it, I know everyone's saying it, but I am a huge fan of Claude. I'm sorry. I am. I also love ChatGPT. I bounce between the two. But I will say both are amazing. And actually, inside of whichever LLM system that you use today, you can actually hook in Dito's MCP and query your Dito data from anywhere. And so, again, for existing customers, if this is something that you're interested in better understanding, please definitely chat with your CSM and get a sense for how we can get you set up and squared away. But hopefully everyone can kind of see my Claude instance. Again, I already have it set up to my Dito for Dito instance. And so I can come in here and I can really prompt it, provide 2 to 3, oops, not 23, 2 to 3 different, I hate typing live, customer product feedback points from Dito. Okay. And then obviously, like I'm beholden to Claude and it being able to kind of collect and solicit kind of the insights. Don't want you to pull from Apollo. Would rather you pull it from Dito. There you go. Now it's pulling from Dito. Sorry, I have way too many connectors hooked into my actual Claude instance. But as you can see here, it's pulling for me some of the insights that are coming directly from my Dito instance. I can also ask it things like, provide me with a product road Map based on the customer feedback in Dito. And so you can start to now, again, kind of prompt Claude to capitalize on the information that is already inside of your Dito instance collected from your customers. And you can query it any way that you would, prompt it any way that you would for any of your Claude projects. And so again, this is pulling from my own sort of like little dummy demo instance. So again, apologies for some of the data that you might see, but I think it's really powerful what you can do once you have again centralized all of that customer feedback into one place that your MCP can then obviously grab and then start to help disseminate and analyze across your organization. So, highly recommend you check it out. And hopefully, this has been helpful in terms of ways to think about sort of how to start to incorporate more customer feedback and more customer evidence into your product feedback and your product roadmap. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and close us out. Again, appreciate everyone's patience while I juggle toggling between multiple screens, and hopefully I'm not frozen anymore for everyone. But I just want to wrap it up. Again, customer feedback is probably the best input that you have for building the right product. But only, as I mentioned, when it's organized and then when it's acted on. So if you leave it scattered, it's going to create that paradox that we started with, where there's more data but less clarity. And so, again, these 5 steps consolidate into one place, score by impact, use AI to find patterns, and close the loop so that people keep contributing. And then obviously tie everything back into the roadmap with evidence. And so Dito was built to help do exactly this. We bring all of that customer feedback together, we run AI analysis on it, and we make it really simple to close the loop. So if any of what we talked about today sounds like your team and what you're facing, I really encourage you to either book a demo or connect with your CSM if you're an existing customer, and we'll show you what this looks like with your actual data. So again, please visit dito.com or feel free to email info@dito.com or your direct CSM. Again, thank you so much. I'm going to open it up for quick audience questions because I recognize we only have about 2 or 3 more minutes, but hopefully this is helpful. And we'll also follow up on this webinar with an ebook that contains a lot of similar advice and also some tips and tricks, additional tips and tricks that you can start to apply right away. So thank you. I appreciate everyone. Let's open up questions. There's a Q&A section. I see 1 or 2 have already come through. So let me go ahead and see. Will we have access to export these results? Hopefully, I kind of answered this question already. Definitely. If you are using an LLM system and you want to hook up Dito's MCP, you can absolutely take those results into your LLM system of choice and start to run a lot of this analysis today. So definitely, like I said, if that's of interest to you, if you're an existing customer, talk to your CSM. If not, reach out to us at info@dito.com or request a demo on dito.com, and we'll make sure we can show you exactly how this could apply to your world. Another question that came in, how long does consolidation take to pay off? Okay. We get this question a lot, and honestly, most teams feel a difference in, frankly, the first week or two. And so you're not waiting for uh, some big migration to finish. I mean, I think just having one place to look instead of 6 really kind of changes how your next prioritization meeting goes. And so if you think about Dito, what's great about it again is not only can you use it to facilitate collecting that feedback directly from your customers, whether it's through an AI interview or through a survey or even ingesting existing inputs from your customers from other sources. We hook up with Gong, we hook up with your CRM. So there's a lot of different places where Dito can actually pull in things from your existing customer feedback tools and then synthesize that to the really critical components inside of Dito. It looks like we're at time. I apologize. There are 1 or 2 questions I didn't get a chance to get to. I will follow up via email. Really, again, I appreciate everyone's time today. 30 minutes is never nearly enough. But again, I'll follow up with an email with a link to the recording as well as that ebook that I promised that contains a few additional tips and tricks. And again, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. Have a good afternoon.